Hi everyone, Richard Robbins here. Well, I've got the numbers now for November of 2018 for the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver. A few things I want to do. I'm going to compare November to November of last year, November to October of this year, but then what I'm going to do is I want to get into what percentage of property types are selling. So in other words, what percentage of sales were detached, were apartments, that sort of thing. And then I want to get into what's happened to average sale price in many different micro markets, sort of in the greater Vancouver area. So something I haven't done before, but I think you'll find this interesting. So let's get started here. If we look at November 2018 to 2017, you can see here 1,608 sales this November, 2,790 feet last November. Our sales are down by 42%. No matter how we cut this is obviously not very good news. So let's, for argument's sake, we're down by 1,300 to 1,400 sales, which means obviously your pie is becoming much smaller, isn't it? Which means for you to maintain what you did last year, you're going to have to try to capture a larger piece of a smaller pie. So if we go here, active listings, way up, 12,300 opposed to 8,700 last year, so we're up by 40%. So our sales are down by 42% year over year, and our listings are up by 40% year over year. Substantial number. What does that do to months of inventory, which determines price? So remember, we talked about 4 to 6 months of inventory, and all that is take this number here and divide this number into that, and that'll give you the months of inventory. What that means is what we have is we've got a market back here that was a seller's market, okay? And now we've moved into a large degree to a full-fledged buyer's market. However, different property types are going to have different months of inventory. So let's have a look at, we look at November to October. So you can see, even if we look at sales, we had 1,608, but we did 1,966 in October. So again, we're down by 18%. That's not terribly uncommon. November quite often is a little bit slower than October and September, and then December becomes a little slower as well. So this is seasonal, but probably down more than it normally would be. And our active listings are down by 5%, which again, not unusual. A lot of people don't list their home in November and in December, so you can see they're a little down. But what does that do to months of inventory? If we look at October, we had 6.6 months of inventory, and we went up to 7.6. So you can see what's starting to happen now is our months of inventory over really the last 3, 4, 5 months have risen consistently, and that means our markets go a little more softer, and it's probably going to continue into next year. But here's something that I think you'll find interesting. If we look at the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver, and if we look at all of the sales, 50% of your sales taking place are now condos. Huge number. Only 32% detached, and 17.5% are townhouses. So you can see what's going on. You've got the most expensive city in Canada right now. People can afford these, and they can't always afford these, so they're moving to buying condos. So let's look at this here. This is your micro market month over month. So if I look at what happened October to November in 2018, you can see that if we look at the whole real estate board that I just showed you, we got 7.6 November and 6.6 months of inventory we had in October. But what happened with detached? This went up by basically 1 month, right? So you can see your inventory is rising, your prices are going to start to weaken, obviously, with this going on. You can see the number of sales. But look at this. We went from 9.7 to 11.2. So detached inventory rose quite a bit more, and sales obviously down. What about apartments? You can see here we went from 4.8 to 5.7. We went by 0.9. Now why did we only go up by, say, 0.9? Because more people are buying what? They're buying apartments. So you can see your inventory is rising faster with detached, rising slower right here. And if you look at townhouses, 5.8 to 6.8, it went up exactly what the average was. You can see that generally speaking, your sales are down. So you can see what's happening right here is this is actually going to be a little bit of a stronger market in this area. Now this one's really interesting. Have a look at this. Now you're going to have to sort of maybe pay attention to hear what I'm saying, but this is really valuable information, and you should be using this with buyers and sellers. You could create this for yourself depending on what market you're in. So if we look at here, what happened to the price, okay, the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver, when we look at the different areas. So this here is your Lower Mainland, this here is Greater Vancouver, this is North Vancouver, and this is West Vancouver. Now why did I pick those markets? Because West Vancouver is an extreme market, very high in prices. North Vancouver is a little lower than that, obviously. Then we take in sort of the greater Vancouver area, and of course, when you look at the Lower Mainland, sort of the condensed downtown area, again, a very unique little market. So if we look at year over year, now this is November to November of this year from last year, you can see prices were up. So we're looking here in the Lower Mainland by 0.7%. But if we look at the whole Vancouver Real Estate Board, we're down by 1.4% in price. But watch what starts to happen. North Van was down by 3.1%, West Van down by 10.4%. Why is this happening? Where's the most expensive real estate, right? So the reason I wanted to show you this is to realize that the most expensive real estate is going to dive in price the most. So let's look over here, detached. So if we look at detached, Lower Mainland down by 4%, Greater Vancouver down by 6.5%, North Van down by 7.6%. Look what happened here, down by 13%. This is in West Vancouver, okay? Let's go to apartments. You look at apartments, if we look at the Lower Mainland, they increased by 4.9%. Remember, lower inventory, okay? We look at Greater Vancouver up by 2.3%. If we look at North Van, just off a little bit, almost even. And then West Van went up by 4.6%. Interesting number, isn't it? So West Van detached went down by 13%, but apartments went up by 4.6%. Really interesting numbers. And then if we look at townhouses, you can see here, up by 3.5%, Lower Mainland up by 2.6%, Greater Vancouver up by 3.2%, but then in West Van, it went down by 1.6%, probably because they're more expensive, not 100% sure. But I thought you'd find that interesting. So imagine this. Imagine if what you did is you decided that you were going to start to create these types of graphs, use these in your presentations, especially for areas that you work. You can break it down to any geographical area. You can start to push this information out on social media. You can blog this information. You can send an email real estate update. This stuff to most consumers would be very, very interesting, because here's what they know. They know inventory is up. They know sales are down. They know the market is off. They're reading all of that in the newspaper. But what does it really mean? Do they actually know that if you look at it, you go look at apartments are actually up in price? You look at, you go to West Van, do they really know that condos are up 4.6% in West Vancouver? I know there's not a lot there, but if you look at what's going on, the detached is down by 13%. So anyway, interesting stuff. So play around with some of these numbers, get to know your market. That makes you a true professional. And remember, you got to be known for what it is you know, not what it is you sell, because they can go online and get a lot of the information themselves. It's not about information. We're information rich, but we're insight poor. This is my last update until January, when I'm just going to talk about the whole year. I won't be doing month to month, so it'll be a different update as well. So anyway, I just want to say happy holidays, Merry Christmas, have a wonderful, wonderful time off. And at the end of the day, remember everybody, it's a beautiful life. Make it count.